You know that feeling when you pull up your bank account and instead of slamming the app shut in a mild panic, you actually feel good about what you see? When you stop doing the mental math on whether a cup of coffee is going to wreck your week or whether buying groceries means surviving on ramen until Friday. There's a specific number where that shift happens, and it's not what most people expect. Most financial gurus will tell you that you need $1 million to feel wealthy, or that 6 figures is the magic number. But here's what they're getting wrong. There's a much smaller milestone that completely transforms your relationship with money. And once you hit it, everything starts to look different. That number is $20,000. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to build wealth almost effortlessly while others stay locked in the same financial patterns for decades. If you're somebody who wants to understand the real mechanics behind building wealth, instead of just hoping things somehow get better on their own, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up changing how you see money. Now, before we get into why $20,000 is the real game changer, let me ask you something. When you picture building wealth, what actually comes to mind? Maybe you think of some trust fund kid who never had a sleepless night over money, or maybe you imagine someone grinding away for years, stacking it up $1 at a time. The truth is, wealth building doesn't work the way most people think it does. Here's what actually happens. There are certain financial thresholds that function like invisible barriers. Cross them, and the entire rulebook changes. $20,000 is the first major threshold that separates people who will build serious wealth from people who will spend their whole lives running on the paycheck-to-paycheck hamster wheel. And the wild part is, most people don't even know this threshold exists. Think about it like this. If you've ever tried to push a heavy boulder up a hill, you know that getting it moving is the hardest part. You're straining, you're sweating, you're barely making any progress, and you're starting to wonder if it's even worth it. But once you build enough momentum, something shifts. The boulder starts rolling on its own, and once you crest the top, it glides down the other side almost without any effort at all. $20,000 is that tipping point where your financial boulder finally makes it over the hill. Everything before that feels like you're fighting gravity. Everything after feels like gravity is finally on your side. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting, and this part will probably catch you off guard. The difference isn't purely mathematical. It's not just that you have more money to invest or that your returns are bigger in dollar terms. The real shift happens inside your head. When you have no savings, your brain runs in what psychologists call survival mode. Every financial choice gets filtered through fear and scarcity. You take the first job offer that comes along, even if it's a bad fit, because you can't afford to wait for better. You stay in situations you can't stand because walking away feels too risky. You say yes to things you don't want to do because you need the income. This isn't just about being practical. When you're stuck in survival mode, your brain literally loses the capacity to think about growth and opportunity. It's like trying to plan a road trip while your house is on fire. Every ounce of mental energy gets consumed by the immediate threat right in front of you. But something genuinely remarkable happens when you cross that $20,000 mark. Your brain finally gets enough breathing room to think differently. Instead of asking, how do I make it to the next paycheck, you start asking, how do I grow what I have? Instead of constantly reacting to whatever financial fire just broke out, you start thinking ahead. Research from Vanguard shows that having just $2,000 in emergency savings boosts financial well-being by 21%. $2,000. That's less than most people drop on a vacation or a decent laptop. But that small cushion creates an enormous psychological shift because it pulls you out of pure survival mode. Push that emergency fund up to 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which lands somewhere around $20,000 for most people, and you get another 13% bump in financial well-being. More importantly, you've now created enough space for your brain to start thinking about building wealth instead of just hanging on to what little you have. Here's where the math starts getting exciting. Say you're putting away $1,000 a month and earning an 8% return on your investments. Getting to your first $20,000 takes about 19 months of consistent saving and investing. That's a year and a half of real discipline, real sacrifice, and real delayed gratification. It's not easy, and honestly, most people quit somewhere along the way. But here's the part that'll actually blow your mind. Your second $20,000 doesn't take another 19 months. It only takes about 17. Why? Because that first $20,000 is now working right alongside your monthly contributions, generating its own returns. Sit with that for a second. You did the exact same work, saved the same amount each month, took on the same level of risk, and you still shaved 2 full months off the timeline just because you had more money in the game. That's compound interest starting to kick in. By the time you're chasing your third $20,000, the timeline shrinks even further. Your money is carrying a bigger and bigger share of the load while you put in the same effort. And when you get into the really big numbers, the acceleration starts to look almost ridiculous. Once you hit $400,000 in your investment portfolio, you can generate your next $20,000 in about 5 months. The same amount that took you nearly 2 years to save initially is now happening automatically through your investments alone. That first milestone feels almost impossible. Every single one after it gets progressively easier. Now, you might be thinking that wealthy people have access to some secret investment world that regular people can't get into. Exclusive hedge funds, special opportunities that only unlock once you've crossed certain wealth levels. And while there's a grain of truth to that at the ultra high end, that's not what's driving this $20,000 phenomenon. The real secret is way simpler and honestly a lot more encouraging than that. It's just basic math working in your corner. When you invest $1,000 and it grows 10% in a year, you pocket $100. Take that exact same 10% and apply it to $10,000, and suddenly you're looking at $1,000 in profit, same investment, same timeline, same level of risk. This is why hitting $20,000 feels like such a turning point. Up until then, your returns feel almost meaningless because the base is too small. A 10% return on $2,000 is $200. Nice, but not exactly the kind of money that changes your life. A 10% return on $20,000 is $2,000. Now we're talking about real money. When you've got $20,000 sitting in investments earning 8% annually, that's $1,600 flowing into your account over the course of a year without you doing a single thing to earn it. Money that didn't come from your job. Money that showed up because your existing money was out there working on your behalf. The investment strategy isn't any more sophisticated than what someone with $1,000 can use. Same index funds, same brokerages, same core principles. The only difference is scale, and that scale turns small percentage gains into real, tangible financial progress. But here's the piece that most people completely miss, and it might honestly be the most important point in this entire video. When you save $20,000, you've accomplished something far more valuable than just stacking cash in an account. You've fundamentally rewired how your brain relates to money and built the most important financial habit you will ever have. That might sound like self-help fluff, but stick with me here because this is where things get genuinely practical. Think about what it actually takes to save $20,000 starting from nothing. Unless you're pulling in serious income or living rent-free, this requires real discipline. You had to track where every single dollar was going. You had to say no to things you wanted so you could set money aside instead. You had to resist the urge to blow your savings every time something shiny caught your eye. And most importantly, you had to do all of that consistently for months, possibly years. Here's the kicker. You proved to yourself that you are in control of your money, not the other way around. You became the kind of person who can delay gratification when it actually counts. That's not just a financial skill. That's a life skill. That identity shift is massive because it filters into every financial decision you make from that point forward. Before you had $20,000 saved, spending $4 on a coffee might have triggered a small mental crisis. After you hit that mark, you're not losing sleep over small purchases anymore because you know your priorities are straight. You've already proven you can make the hard calls when it really matters. But there's another psychological shift that happens at this level that almost nobody talks about. You start spotting opportunities instead of just bracing for threats. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every unexpected expense feels like a catastrophe. Car repairs, a dead laptop, a rent increase, these aren't opportunities. They're emergencies that blow up your entire month. But when you've got $20,000 in the bank, those same situations become minor inconveniences at worst. Your car needs work? Annoying, but totally manageable. Laptop dies? Maybe it's time to upgrade. Rent goes up? Maybe it's finally time to find a better place, or go back to your boss and have that salary conversation. Even better, you start noticing opportunities that were always there, but completely out of reach before. A friend mentions they're starting a business and looking for early investors. Before, you would have thought that sounds cool and moved right along. Now you can actually sit down and think about whether it makes sense to put $5,000 in. A deal pops up on a rental property that needs some work. Before, you would have scrolled past it and felt a little envious. Now you can run the numbers and see if it holds up. Your boss mentions a conference in another city that could open real doors, but the company won't cover it. Before, you would have made excuses. Now you can weigh whether the return is worth the spend. This is what people mean when they say money goes to money. It's not some cosmic conspiracy where the universe rewards people who already have a cushion. It's that having money gives you options, and options create more paths to make more money. Here's something else that happens right around that $20,000 mark that might make you rethink everything you thought you knew about budgeting. You stop obsessing over small expenses and start paying serious attention to the big ones. I know that sounds backward, but hear me out. When you're broke, you agonize over every purchase, name brand or generic. Is it worth $3 for coffee when I could make it at home? Regular gas or premium? These micro decisions eat up mental energy because every single dollar feels like it matters. But when you've got a real financial foundation under you, you start to realize these small calls are largely irrelevant. The difference between buying coffee out every day versus making it at home might save you $1,000 a year if you're really going hard. That's not nothing, but it's not going to make or break your financial future. What actually matters are the big decisions. Where you live, what you drive, how much you save, where you invest. These choices can swing your net worth by tens of thousands of dollars over time. So instead of burning mental energy on whether to grab the organic bananas, you redirect that focus toward optimizing your housing costs, growing your income, and making sure your investment plan is actually solid. That shift in focus is incredibly freeing because it clears headspace for the decisions that move the needle. You stop sweating the small stuff and start thinking strategically about where you're actually headed. Now let's talk about what this milestone does to your career, because this is where it gets really interesting. Having $20,000 saved doesn't just change how you think about money, it changes how you show up at work. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're essentially trapped in whatever job you're currently sitting in. Your boss might be terrible, your coworkers might be toxic, the work might be soul draining. But you can't leave because you need that next check to keep the lights on. That puts you in an incredibly weak spot. You can't ask for a raise because you're scared they'll show you the door. You can't push back on unreasonable demands because you need this job more than they need you. You can't go explore other options because taking time off for interviews feels too dangerous. You're stuck, and deep down, everyone can tell. But $20,000 changes the whole dynamic. Now you have what I call walking away money. You could hand in your notice tomorrow and stay afloat for months while you find something better. That doesn't mean you should be reckless or torch relationships on the way out, but it means you're negotiating from strength instead of desperation. That psychological shift touches everything about how you carry yourself at work. You ask for the raise you actually deserve because the worst they can say is no. And you'll be fine either way. You push back on unreasonable requests because you're not terrified of the fallout. You pursue new opportunities because you can afford to take a calculated risk. And here's the wild part. Most of the time, you never even have to use that walking away money. Just knowing it's there changes how you walk into a room. You're more confident, more direct, more willing to take on tough projects and speak your mind. And when you show up differently, people notice. Better assignments follow. More recognition follows. And yes, more money follows. It's like holding a trump card you hope you never have to play, but just having it in your hand changes the entire game. The more confident and successful you become at work, the faster you build wealth, which gives you even more options, which makes you even more confident. It's a positive feedback loop that feeds itself. But here's where most people blow it, and I see this constantly. They hit $20,000, feel that shift kick in, and immediately go out and spend it on something stupid. They decide they deserve a new car since they've been so disciplined. They book an expensive vacation because they've earned a break. They use it as a down payment on a house they genuinely can't afford. Don't do this. That $20,000 is not a prize for good behavior. It's the foundation of your entire financial future. It's the seed that, if you're patient enough to let it compound, grows into something that can change your family's trajectory for generations. And here's something that'll probably make you laugh or sting a little, depending on where you're at right now. The average person spends more money on their car over a lifetime than it would take to reach complete financial independence. Think about what that actually means. Between car payments, insurance, maintenance, and gas, most people are burning through $600 to $800 every single month just on transportation. Over 40 years, that's easily $400,000 or more, just to get from one place to another. And those same people will tell you they can't afford to save for retirement. It's like watching someone blow a fortune on a gym membership they never use and then complaining they can't afford to eat well. Here's what makes it even more frustrating. The moment you drive a brand new car off the lot, it loses roughly 20% of its value. You're not just spending money, you're actively torching wealth. Compare that to dropping the same amount into a diversified portfolio. Instead of watching your money evaporate, you're watching it multiply. I get it though. Cars are emotional. You want something dependable, something that looks sharp, something that makes you feel like you've made it. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're clear on what you're actually trading away. That monthly car payment might make you feel successful, but it's quietly keeping you from becoming successful. This is exactly where having $20,000 saved starts reshaping how you look at big purchases. Instead of asking, can I handle the monthly payment? You start asking, what is this actually costing me in terms of what else I could do with this money? That $30,000 car isn't just $30,000. It's $30,000 that could have compounded into over $200,000 in your investment account over 20 years. All of a sudden, driving a reliable used car doesn't feel like settling. It feels like a deliberate move that's quietly funding your future freedom. And here's the beautiful irony in all of it. The person driving the flashy new car is probably lying awake, stressed about money. The person in the older Honda is building wealth in the background and sleeping just fine. This way of thinking extends to every major financial call you make. Housing, education, vacations, hobbies. Everything gets run through the lens of opportunity cost. Not in a way that squeezes all the joy out of life, but in a way that makes sure your money is going where it actually matters to you. And here's something that might genuinely surprise you. Once you start thinking this way, you realize you don't even want half the stuff you thought you did. That bigger apartment? The extra space would be nice, but is it worth pushing back your financial independence by 5 years? That expensive hobby? Fun. But there are probably cheaper ways to get the same enjoyment out of it. This isn't about becoming someone who pinches every penny and never enjoys anything. It's about being intentional with your money instead of watching it disappear on things that don't really move the needle for you. When you have real financial goals and you truly understand what compound interest can do, it gets a whole lot easier to separate what you think you want from what you actually want. Look, $20,000 isn't going to make you rich overnight, but it will fundamentally change the way you think about money and opportunity. It's the difference between surviving and actually building something, between reacting to life as it happens and deliberately designing it. Start laying that foundation today, because the version of you 10 years from now is counting on the decision you make right now. Trust me, they'll thank you for it.